Beloved soul, in this very moment, I invite you to pause and breathe deeply, allowing the weight of this encounter to settle upon your spirit. Your presence here is no mere coincidence, no random occurrence in the vast tapestry of existence. Every step that has led you to this precise moment has been carefully orchestrated by divine hands, woven together with threads of purpose that stretch back through time itself. You have been drawn close, pulled into this sacred space, because there is something profound and life-altering waiting to be unveiled to you. You who have journeyed through the deepest valleys of shadow and despair, who have carried the crushing weight of silence when words seemed inadequate, who have fought battles that remained invisible to the naked eye, know with absolute certainty that every single step has been witnessed by eyes that never sleep. Though the overwhelming sensation of isolation may have pressed upon your soul like a heavy blanket, though loneliness may have whispered lies about abandonment, the truth remains unshakable. You were never truly alone. The quiet tears that fell in the darkness of your private moments, when no human eye was present to witness your pain, those tears were seen, counted, and treasured. The deep ache that settled in the chambers of your heart when circumstances demanded that you stand strong while every fiber of your being trembled with uncertainty and fear. That internal struggle was not hidden from divine sight. You did not retreat when retreat would have been the easier path. You did not curse the darkness that seemed to swallow hope itself. Instead, you remained steadfast, wounded yet resilient, weary yet deeply rooted in faith that transcended understanding. This perseverance, this unwavering commitment to remain anchored in divine truth despite overwhelming circumstances, this is what true spiritual beauty looks like, the recognition of holy ground. In this very moment, a sacred transformation is beginning to unfold before your eyes, a metamorphosis so profound that few possess the spiritual sensitivity to recognize its magnitude, and even fewer are adequately prepared in their hearts and minds to receive its fullness. But you, precious child of the Most High, you stand upon ground that has been consecrated as holy, set apart for this very purpose. This time, this season, this divine appointment has been specifically prepared for you, crafted with meticulous care and infinite wisdom. This is not merely another blessing among many. This is a divine transition, a crossing over from one realm of existence into another entirely. What stretches out before you on the horizon of your future is not simply an improved season, a temporary relief from past difficulties, or a brief respite from struggle. What you are stepping into represents nothing less than a divine revelation, an unveiling of truths that have been hidden in the secret places of God's heart. The relief from past struggles, while certainly part of this divine package, is only the beginning, merely the first layer of what is being offered to you. You are being elevated, lifted to new heights, not despite what you allowed to be shaped within you during those very trials, but precisely because of it. This elevation transcends the concept of reward in its traditional sense. While reward focuses on compensation for past actions, this elevation represents recognition, divine recognition of who you became in the crucible of testing. Your service throughout the difficult seasons was not motivated by the promise of outcomes or the guarantee of specific results. Your faithfulness was not contingent upon receiving what you asked for when you asked for it. Instead, your service flowed from a deep well of relationship, an intimate connection with the divine that valued presence over presence, fellowship over favors. This distinction, this heart posture that chose relationship over results, is what sets you apart in this moment and the crucible of character formation. You have walked through seasons that seemed specifically designed to define you, to label you with limitations and reduce you to the sum of your struggles. These were seasons that attempted to crush the very essence of who you were created to be, to erase the promises that had been spoken over your life before you even drew your first breath. The pressure was immense, the weight sometimes unbearable, and there were moments when the very ground beneath your feet felt like it was giving way. Even in the midst of confusion so thick it seemed to have physical substance, when your own voice was completely drowned out by the deafening roar of doubt and uncertainty, you held firm to what you knew to be true. When lies screamed with the volume of 1,000 voices, you whispered truth with quiet determination. When compromise beckoned with promises of immediate comfort and relief from the pressure, you chose the narrow path of integrity. When the burden seemed too heavy for your shoulders to bear, you carried it anyway, with a quiet resolve that spoke of strength beyond your own. When retreat appeared not just as an option, but as the logical, sensible choice that any reasonable person would make, you chose instead to move forward into the unknown. With hands that bore the marks of brokenness, hands that trembled with exhaustion and uncertainty, you continued building. In fields that appeared barren and lifeless, where nothing seemed capable of taking root and flourishing, you planted seeds of faith with meticulous care. While others looked upon the landscape of your life and saw only wilderness, only desolation and hopelessness, something entirely different was taking place in the unseen realm. A sanctuary was being formed in the depths of your soul, a holy place where divine presence could dwell. Heaven observed this entire process, not in the distant, detached manner of a casual observer, but with the intense focus and deep investment of a loving parent watching their child navigate the most crucial moments of development. The observation was conducted in silence, yes, but never in absence. Every moment when you chose surrender over self-will, every decision to believe when believing seemed foolish, every time you chose to say yes to divine leading when saying no would have felt safer and more logical, all of it was recorded in the eternal archives of heaven, standing at the threshold of destiny. Now, in this pivotal moment, you find yourself standing at the very threshold of something your spirit has longed for with an intensity that defied explanation. Something so deep and profound that human language seemed inadequate to express its nature. The yearning was real, persistent, and undeniable, even when you lacked the vocabulary to articulate exactly what it was you were hoping for. You are entering into a time of divine confirmation, when the promises that seemed to hang in the balance will be established with unmistakable clarity. But beyond confirmation, you are about to receive revelation, divine insight into why certain seasons were allowed to unfold exactly as they did, why the path twisted and turned in ways that seemed unnecessarily complicated, why doors remained closed when opening them would have seemed to serve everyone's best interests. The process you endured was never simply about character development in the traditional sense, though character was certainly refined in the fire of testing. Something far more profound was taking place. Divine presence was being established, woven into the very fabric of your being with such permanence that it could never be extracted or removed. You are in the process of becoming a living dwelling place where divine glory can take up residence, not as a temporary visitor who comes and goes according to circumstances, but as a permanent resident who has found a home built for power, not popularity. The truth that must be understood with crystal clarity is this: you were not designed, fashioned, or created to carry popularity. The applause of crowds, the approval of the masses, the fickle affection of those who cheer today and criticize tomorrow, none of this was ever meant to be your portion or your pursuit. Instead, you were meticulously crafted to carry power, and true power, the kind that transforms lives and shifts the course of history, comes only through a process that refines, tests, and purifies every aspect of character and calling. Many individuals began this journey with sincere intentions and genuine hearts. Their initial enthusiasm was real, their commitment appeared solid, and their declarations of faithfulness rang true. However, when the fire of testing intensified beyond what they had anticipated, when the heat became almost unbearable and the pressure seemed to exceed human capacity to endure, they made the choice to step away. They fell back, retreated to safer ground, and sought easier paths that demanded less and promised more immediate gratification. You, however, remained steadfast. You stayed when the noise around you became so deafening that it seemed impossible to hear your own thoughts, much less the still, small voice of divine guidance. You stayed when your prayers seemed to return unanswered, when the heavens appeared to be made of brass and your words seemed to bounce back unheard. You stayed when your heart was shattered into what felt like a million irreparable pieces, when the fragments of your dreams and hopes seemed impossible to reassemble into anything the covenant keepers resembling wholeness. This message, this word of encouragement and commissioning, is specifically crafted for you, not for the casually curious who dabble in spiritual matters when convenient, not for those who seek divine intervention only in times of crisis, but for the covenant keepers. You are among those rare souls who chose faithfulness not in the spotlight of public recognition, not when the stage was brightly lit and the audience was applauding, but in the silence and stillness when the spotlight had faded and the stage stood empty. Your faithfulness was not contingent upon receiving applause or recognition from others. You didn't require the validation of human approval to remain committed to your calling. The only audience you needed was divine presence itself, and that presence was sufficient. It was enough to sustain you through the darkest nights and the most challenging days. This moment represents far more than simply receiving an answer to long-held prayers, though answers are certainly part of what is being offered. This is a turning point of epic proportions, a pivotal moment when the entire narrative of your life takes a dramatic shift in direction. Where you were consistently misunderstood, your motives questioned, and your actions misinterpreted, you will now be seen with perfect clarity. Where you faced rejection, doors slammed in your face, and opportunities withheld, you will now receive invitations that exceed your highest expectations. Where you were hidden in obscurity, your gifts unrecognized, and your potential overlooked, you will now be revealed in the fullness of your divine calling. But let this be understood without any ambiguity. This revelation is not for your personal glory or ego gratification. The spotlight that now shines upon your life is intended to illuminate divine glory working through human vassals. The divine hand has been writing your story all along, crafting each chapter with infinite wisdom and perfect timing. Now the chapters that were forged in the fire of adversity, tempered by trial and refined by testing, will be displayed for all to see. Divine elevation principles. Others will look upon the transformation of your circumstances and marvel at the speed and magnitude of change. But only you and divine wisdom will truly comprehend the cost that was paid behind the scenes, the price that was extracted in the hidden places where no cameras were rolling and no audiences were watching. The elevation you are experiencing is not based on appearance or performance, not determined by how well you can present yourself or how impressive your resume might appear to human evaluators. Divine elevation operates according to entirely different principles. It is based upon heart posture, the attitude of your spirit, the orientation of your soul, the depth of your surrender, and your heart posture has been examined thoroughly and found to be faithful. Through every test, every trial, every moment when faithfulness was costly and compromise would have been profitable, you chose the path of integrity. What is coming into your life in the days ahead will not make logical sense to those who did not walk beside you through the valley of testing. They will ask with genuine bewilderment, how did this happen? What formula did they follow? What connections did they leverage? But you will know with unshakable certainty that it was divine intervention, divine timing, and divine favor that orchestrated every detail. You did not manipulate circumstances to force doors to open before their appointed time. You did not beg for visibility or campaign for recognition. You did not resort to political maneuvering or strategic networking to position yourself for advancement. Instead, you trusted divine wisdom in the seasons of obscurity. And now that same divine wisdom is making your name known, not for the pursuit of fame or celebrity status, but for the sacred assignment. The influence that is being placed in your hands comes with sacred responsibility. It is intrinsically tied to divine purpose and cannot be separated from the mission for which you were created. This is not about building a platform for self-promotion or personal aggrandizement. This is about creating a vessel for pouring out the treasures that have been deposited within your spirit over years of faithful preparation. You are not merely a recipient of grace, someone who stands on the receiving end of divine blessing. You have been transformed into a carrier of transformation, a vessel through which divine power flows to touch and change the lives of others. As you touch and help others, the process you endured, the lessons you learned, the character that was developed, and the intimacy with divine presence that was cultivated, all of this was preparation for this moment, when you would become the answer to prayers that others have yet to pray. Therefore, do not allow doubt to creep into your thinking about the season you are entering. Do not minimize or dismiss the stirring you feel deep within your spirit as mere emotion or wishful thinking. This stirring is not anxiety masquerading as spiritual sensitivity. This is activation, the sound of destiny awakening within the depths of your being. This is the sound of heavenly alignment overtaking and overriding every delay that has frustrated you, every disappointment that has discouraged you, and every detour that has confused you. Positioned for purpose. You are not lost, wandering aimlessly through life without direction or purpose. You are being strategically positioned by divine wisdom for maximum effectiveness in fulfilling your calling. Everything that appeared dormant, every gift that seemed to be lying fallow, every dream that appeared to have died, all of it is about to burst forth with new life and vitality. The time of patient cultivation, when roots were growing deep beneath the surface where no one could see the progress being made, has given way to the season when fruit will be visible for all to witness. This marks the beginning of your divine unveiling, the moment when what has been hidden will be revealed, when what has been prepared in secret will be demonstrated in public, when the investment of years will begin to yield returns that exceed your most optimistic expectations, the weight of secret burdens. My beloved child, as we continue to journey together through this sacred unfolding of divine purpose, it is crucial that you understand this fundamental truth. The weight you have carried in the secret places of your heart, the burdens that no one else knew about or could fully comprehend, have not been meaningless or in vain. Every tear that fell in the darkness when no human eye was watching, every moment of anguish when you wrestled with questions that seemed to have no answers, none of this escaped divine attention or concern. Those tears were not ignored, dismissed, or forgotten. They were gathered with tender care, collected like precious pearls, and held close to the divine heart. They now serve a purpose beyond what you could have imagined in your darkest moments. They water the soil of a coming harvest that will exceed anything your mind has been able to conceive or your heart has dared to hope for. During those long seasons when you thought you were merely surviving, when each day felt like an exercise in endurance rather than an adventure in living, something far more significant was taking place beneath the surface. Divine hands were building something eternal within the depths of your spirit, constructing a foundation that would prove unshakable when the storms of life would later test its integrity. Even when external circumstances gave no indication that anything was changing, when the landscape of your life appeared static and unchanging, transformation was happening in the hidden places where only divine eyes could see the progress being made. Layer by layer, experience by experience, trial by trial, you were becoming unshakable, not by avoiding pain and difficulty, but by learning to stand firm in the midst of them. The divine forging process, what others chose to escape through various means of avoidance or denial, you courageously endured with divine help. What others quickly dismissed as too difficult or demanding, you leaned into with supernatural strength that came from above. The process of standing firm when everything around you was shaking, of maintaining hope when circumstances painted a picture of hopelessness, of continuing to believe when belief seemed foolish. This process forged within you a strength that could never have been developed through easier means. Now, this strength that was developed in hiddenness, tested in obscurity, and refined in solitude, will serve as the foundation that supports the blessing that is about to be revealed in the full view of others. The private preparation was not wasted time. It was essential groundwork for public ministry. You are stepping into what can only be described as a divine shift, a supernatural transition that defies natural explanation and transcends ordinary patterns of progression. This is not the result of gradual improvement over time or the natural evolution of circumstances. This is supernatural intervention, divine acceleration, and heavenly realignment, all converging at precisely the right moment. The transformation you are experiencing will not follow the predictable patterns that govern most life changes. It will not be explainable through logic, reason, or natural cause and effect. The magnitude and speed of change will cause observers to search for explanations that simply do not exist in the realm of natural understanding. This is precisely why staying closely connected to divine guidance is absolutely crucial during this season. Heavenly alignment over earthly qualification. The miraculous events that are unfolding in your life are not the result of earthly qualifications, educational achievements, social connections, or strategic positioning. They are the direct result of heavenly alignment, your spirit coming into perfect harmony with divine will and purpose. This alignment creates a supernatural flow that bypasses normal channels and opens pathways that human effort alone could never access. You do not need to spend time or energy trying to explain yourself to others who may question how these changes came about so suddenly. Explanation is not your responsibility. Divine confirmation is. The same power that orchestrated these changes will also provide the validation needed to establish their authenticity. You will be announced not by human promoters, but by divine demonstration. Even those who previously dismissed your potential, overlooked your gifts, or questioned your calling will be compelled to acknowledge the unmistakable evidence of divine favor resting upon your life. This acknowledgement will not come for the purpose of vindication or to give you reason to gloat over past rejections. Instead, it will serve as a powerful testimony to divine faithfulness that others desperately need to witness. The currency of heaven. Divine eyes have observed with perfect clarity how you chose faithfulness in your moments of greatest weakness. When strength was lacking and confidence was shattered, when you felt least capable of standing firm, you still chose to trust rather than abandon your position. You could have easily turned back to easier paths when the way forward seemed impossible. You could have settled for lesser things when your original dreams seemed too difficult to pursue. You could have chased convenience and comfort when the call to excellence demanded sacrifice, but you didn't take any of these easier options. When you felt forgotten by both heaven and earth, when it seemed like your prayers were disappearing into a void, you continued to trust in divine goodness and faithfulness. When doors that you had expected to open remained firmly shut, when opportunities you had anticipated failed to materialize, you continued to knock with persistent faith. When prayers felt unanswered and heaven seemed silent, you still whispered the divine name with reverence and hope. This unwavering trust, maintained through the darkest seasons and most challenging circumstances, has become a fragrance that rises before the throne of heaven. It has ascended not as the desperate pleading of someone driven by panic, but as the sweet aroma of devotion offered by a heart that loves regardless of circumstances. This is the currency that heaven values above all else, not perfect performance, but persistent devotion, the undeniable shift. Because your trust was rooted in covenant relationship rather than casual agreement, because it flowed from deep love rather than superficial convenience, the shift you are experiencing carries an undeniable quality that cannot be explained away or attributed to coincidence. This transformation is born out of covenant commitment, not random chance or fortunate timing. Your relationship with divine presence went far beyond simply holding on when times were tough. You clung with every fiber of your being, with complete abandonment of self-preservation, with total surrender of personal agenda. This level of commitment, this depth of consecration, has created a response from heaven that can only be described as a flood of favor. Divine blessing released with such force and abundance that only infinite resources could provide it. This favor is not a temporary phenomenon, not a brief moment of breakthrough that will quickly fade back into ordinary experience. What you are receiving is sustained access to realms that were previously beyond your reach. This access includes realms of influence where your voice will carry weight, realms of spiritual authority where your prayers will move mountains, and realms of opportunity where doors will open that no human power can shut. The breaking of limitations. The season of limitation, the time when you felt constrained by circumstances beyond your control, when progress seemed blocked and advancement appeared impossible, has officially expired. The ceiling that seemed to cap your potential has been shattered. The boundaries that appeared to define the limits of what was possible in your life are expanding beyond anything you had previously imagined. You have proven yourself trustworthy with more significant responsibility, not because you always felt strong and confident, but because you never let go of your fundamental commitment to divine will. even when your knees buckled under the weight of prolonged waiting, when patience was stretched to its breaking point and endurance seemed to have reached its limit. You learned to lean more heavily on strength that came from above, rather than relying solely on your own resources. This proven faithfulness in difficult circumstances is precisely why you are now being called to higher levels of responsibility and authority. The promotion you are receiving is not based on natural performance metrics or worldly achievement standards. It is based on heart posture, the consistent attitude of your spirit that chose surrender over self-will, obedience over convenience, and divine approval over human applause. The authority of divine presence. There is a spiritual authority being placed upon your voice that will change the very atmosphere when you speak. You will not need to raise your voice to be heard above the noise of competing messages. You will not need to fight for attention or struggle to gain a platform. Your presence will carry weight, not because of who you are in natural terms, but because of who dwells within you through divine indwelling. Your words will carry supernatural power because they are born from the place of intimate communion with divine presence. What others may have gained through building impressive platforms, accumulating large followings, or developing sophisticated marketing strategies, you are receiving through the pathway of purity. Clean hands, a pure heart, and motives that have been refined in the fire of testing. You didn't climb over others to be seen, stepping on relationships, or compromising integrity to reach higher positions. Instead, you bowed low in humility before divine presence, to be shaped according to perfect will and design. This process of humility and submission has produced a vessel that is fit for honor, prepared for sacred use, and ready to carry the weighty responsibility of divine assignment. From blessing to commission, you are not merely being blessed for the sake of enjoying personal improvement or increased comfort. What is happening in your life represents a divine commissioning, a setting apart for sacred service that extends far beyond personal benefit. You are not being elevated simply to enjoy a better view of life from a higher vantage point. You are being strategically positioned to release divine vision, to pour out the treasures that have been deposited within your spirit, and to serve as a conduit through which heaven's resources flow to meet the needs of others. The weariness that attempted to silence your hope during the long seasons of waiting, the exhaustion that crept in as you continued to believe for change that seemed slow in coming, the thoughts that whispered discouraging suggestions like, maybe it's too late, or maybe I misunderstood what was promised. All of these challenges to your faith are being silenced by the reality of divine fulfillment. None of the waiting was wasted time. Every moment served a purpose in the grand design of your preparation. Every delay was part of a refining process that removed impurities and strengthened essential qualities. Every detour that seemed to take you away from your destination was actually a strategic element in a plan that only infinite wisdom could design. The timing that you questioned, the delays that frustrated you, and the circuitous route that confused you, all of it was divinely ordained and perfectly orchestrated. The fullness of time. Now the fullness of time has arrived. That precise moment when all preparations have been completed, all requirements have been met, and all conditions have been fulfilled for the release of what has been promised. You are about to understand with perfect clarity why the process required what it did, why certain elements could not be rushed, and why the timeline unfolded exactly as it did. The very areas where you experienced the deepest pain, the greatest disappointment, and the most intense struggle are about to become portals through which divine power flows with extraordinary impact. What once brought tears of sorrow will become fountains of joy. What once represented loss will become sources of strength. What once symbolized endings will be the eternal awakening. You will recognize this divine shift not merely by observing external changes in your circumstances, though such changes will certainly be evident and undeniable. The most significant indicator will be what awakens within the depths of your dreams that seem to have been buried beneath the weight of disappointment and delay are being reactivated with fresh vision and renewed purpose. Callings that appeared to have been forgotten, set aside by the demands of survival and the pressure of immediate needs, are being reignited with passionate intensity. Visions that once felt too heavy to carry, too large to pursue, and too ambitious to achieve are being stirred back to life with supernatural enablement. Your approach will be completely different from previous attempts to fulfill your calling. You will not strive with human effort, fighting against circumstances and forcing doors to open through willpower and determination. Instead, you will flow in divine rhythm, moving in harmony with heavenly timing and supernatural enablement. The grace-empowered life. What required tremendous effort in previous seasons will now be marked by grace that makes difficult things feel natural and challenging tasks feel effortless. What demanded exhausting struggle will now unfold with the ease that comes from perfect alignment between human surrender and divine empowerment. You are stepping into a rhythm with divine presence that releases results without the exhaustion that characterized your previous attempts to fulfill your calling. This is not the result of human striving, grinding, or forcing outcomes through sheer determination. This is evidence of divine orchestration, heavenly coordination, and supernatural enablement, working through a yielded vessel. As you rise to new levels of influence and responsibility, it is crucial that you maintain the humility that brought you to this place. Do not allow recognition from others to shift your focus away from the divine source of your strength and success. Keep your eyes fixed firmly on divine presence rather than being distracted by human applause. Keep your heart tender and responsive to divine leading, rather than allowing it to become hardened by success or prideful because of achievement. Keep your spirit anchored securely in eternal truth, rather than being moved by temporary circumstances or popular opinion. The divine progression. This elevation you are experiencing is not a final destination where you can rest on your accomplishments and coast on past victories. This is divine progression, a continuous journey of growth, development, and increasing effectiveness in fulfilling your calling. There will be more opportunities for advancement, greater responsibilities to embrace, and higher levels of authority to stewarding wisely. However, every step forward must be taken in perfect step with divine guidance. The divine heart desires not simply to bless you with good things and then step back to watch you enjoy them independently. Divine presence wants to walk with you through every aspect of your blessing, to dwell in the midst of your success, and to be intimately involved in every decision you make and every relationship you build. The goal is that everything you touch will carry the fragrance of heaven, not just your personal fingerprint. You are not being elevated to prove that others were wrong in their assessment of your potential, or to provide you with opportunities for vindication against those who doubted your calling. You are being elevated to prove that divine promises are reliable, that divine faithfulness never fails, and that divine timing is always perfect, even when it seems delayed from a human perspective. The living testimony. Your life is becoming a living testimony to the truth that divine promises never fail, even when they seem to tarry beyond what seems reasonable. Through your experience, others who are currently walking through their own seasons of waiting and testing will find the courage to believe that their breakthrough is also coming. They will look at the transformation of your circumstances and say with renewed hope, if divine faithfulness could accomplish this in their life, then it can certainly work in mine as well. You are becoming a signpost planted firmly in the earth, a visible reminder to all who observe your journey that divine presence does not forget those who trust in divine goodness, does not lie to those who believe divine promises, and does not delay the fulfillment of divine purposes without good reason. Let your spirit receive this word completely and fully. Allow it to settle into every place where weariness has taken up residence. Let it stir hope in areas where disappointment attempted to establish permanent residence. Let it breathe fresh life into regions of your heart that felt forgotten, overlooked, or abandoned. The divine voice is not merely speaking words of comfort. Divine power is actively moving to bring about the complete alignment of your circumstances with divine will and purpose. The depth of divine investment. As you begin to perceive with spiritual eyes the magnitude of what divine wisdom is unveiling in your life, it is essential that your heart remains wide open and receptive, for there are additional layers of truth and understanding that must be imparted to complete the picture of what is taking place. You must understand this fundamental truth. Everything you endured, every challenge you faced head-on, every moment that seemed designed to tear you down and destroy your hope, was actually functioning as preparation to enable you to carry what others could not bear. The weight of responsibility, the intensity of calling, and the magnitude of influence that are being entrusted to you require a depth of character and strength of spirit that can only be developed through the kind of testing you have experienced. You have been entrusted with much, precisely because you allowed divine hands to form genuine depth within the core of your being. Rather than remaining shallow, surface level, and easily moved by changing circumstances, you have been transformed into someone with roots that go deep, foundations that cannot be shaken, and convictions that remain firm regardless of external pressure. Now that these deep foundations have been properly set and thoroughly tested, divine construction is beginning on something lasting and permanent. What is being built will not collapse under pressure like structures built hastily on shallow foundations. What is being established will not crumble when storms come, as is often the case with edifices constructed without proper preparation. This construction project will glorify divine wisdom both in its remarkable strength and in its beautiful humility. Understanding the divine timeline, you have wondered with genuine confusion why the process had to involve so much pain, why the shaping took such an extended period of time, why the waiting seemed to stretch on endlessly without clear indication of progress being made. These questions arose from an honest heart seeking to understand divine ways, and they deserve honest answers. The extended process was necessary because divine wisdom wasn't simply preparing things for you to receive and enjoy. Simultaneously, divine wisdom was preparing you for the things that would be entrusted to your care. The gifts that divine love bestows are always weighty in their meaning, eternal in their consequences, and designed to bring blessing not only to you as the recipient, but to everyone whose life will be touched through your faithful stewardship. If the fullness of what you requested had been granted prematurely, before the necessary character development had been completed, the blessing itself might have become a burden too heavy for you to bear. The responsibility might have crushed you rather than lifted you. The platform might have exposed weaknesses that needed to be addressed in private rather than public settings. However, because you yielded to divine timing rather than insisting on your own schedule, because you submitted to divine molding rather than resisting the uncomfortable process of change, you are now able to steward with wisdom and grace what divine love is preparing to pour out upon your life, the sacred sacrifice. Divine eyes have observed and recorded your sacrifices, particularly the quiet ones that received no public recognition, the ones that no one praised or even noticed were being made. Every time you surrendered personal comfort to obey the divine voice, every occasion when you chose the more difficult path because it aligned with divine will, every moment when you prioritized divine approval over human applause, all of these choices were witnessed and valued. Special attention was given to those times when you chose stillness over striving, when you resisted the temptation to force outcomes through human manipulation and instead waited for divine timing to unfold. Note was taken when you chose silence over defending yourself, when you allowed others to misunderstand your motives rather than compromising your integrity to set the record straight. Deep appreciation was felt when you chose forgiveness over bitterness, when you released those who had wronged you rather than harboring resentment that would have poisoned your own spirit. These were not minor choices with minimal impact on your spiritual development. These were kingdom decisions, choices that aligned your heart more closely with divine character and divine values. They were the markers of true maturity, the clear indicators that your heart was progressively aligning more perfectly with divine heart and divine priorities. Divine love does not ignore or overlook sacrifices made in secret places away from public observation. Instead, these hidden acts of obedience are multiplied in their impact, rewarded beyond what seems proportional to their size, and crowned with divine purpose that extends far beyond the original act of sacrifice. The motivation of love. Your service throughout the most difficult seasons was not motivated by transactional thinking, the expectation that faithful service would automatically result in specific rewards delivered according to your timeline. Instead, your service flowed from a heart of love that continued to choose devotion even when external circumstances provided little evidence that your faithfulness was being noticed or valued. Even when you experienced deep disappointment over delays in answered prayer, even when you felt misunderstood by those whose approval you valued, even when breakthrough seemed to be postponed indefinitely beyond your expectations, It was love that kept you anchored in relationship with divine presence. This love was not dependent on favorable circumstances or immediate gratification of your requests. Love is the currency that moves the divine heart, the offering that captures divine attention, and the force that motivates divine response. Your elevation is unstoppable, not because you earned it through perfect performance or flawless behavior, but because you honored divine presence with consistent affection that persevered through every test. Divine response is being given not merely to your prayers and requests, but to the posture of your heart, the attitude of love that remained constant even when feelings fluctuated, the commitment that stayed firm even when circumstances changed, and the devotion that persevered even when the path forward seemed unclear. Spiritual warfare and divine victory. Do not make the mistake of thinking that the enemy of your soul is unaware of what is transpiring in this pivotal moment of your life. Dark forces have been carefully observing the trajectory of your spiritual development and have made desperate attempts to disrupt, derail, and destroy what divine wisdom has been building. The battles you fought were fierce and intense precisely because the calling on your life is great and significant. The opposition you faced was relentless and uncompromising because the anointing you carry is uncommon and threatens the kingdom of darkness. The attacks against your mind, your faith, your relationships, and your sense of identity were not random occurrences. They were strategic assaults designed to prevent you from reaching this moment of divine commissioning. However, you can take heart and be greatly encouraged by this truth. Every assault that was launched against you, every lie that was whispered to undermine your confidence, every trap that was set to ensnare you and halt your progress, all of these attacks were ultimately used by divine wisdom to build your resilience and strengthen your spiritual fortifications. What was sent with the intention of breaking your spirit actually built your character. What was designed to silence your voice and eliminate your influence actually sharpened your message and refined your calling. What was meant for evil, intended to destroy your future and rob you of your destiny, has already been transformed by divine power and turned for your ultimate good. You are not emerging from this season as someone who barely survived a devastating defeat. You are rising as a victor who has been through a process of divine forging that has prepared you for unprecedented levels of authority and influence. You are not weak, depleted, or diminished by what you have endured. You have been weaponized in the spiritual realm, equipped with supernatural tools and divine strategies that will enable you to accomplish what previous generations could only dream about. The generational impact. Your hands, which have been strengthened through adversity and trained through trials, will now build structures and establish foundations that generations before you only prayed to see. Your voice, which has been refined through seasons of silence and purified through periods of testing, will speak into places and situations that your ancestors could only intercede for from a distance. Your life will become a key that opens doors for others to walk through, creating access to realms of blessing and opportunity that were previously locked and inaccessible. This is the essence of true legacy, not merely receiving blessing for yourself, but becoming a conduit through which blessing flows to countless others. This is the nature of spiritual inheritance, not just enjoying the fruit of previous generations' faithfulness, but planting seeds that will produce fruit for generations yet to come. This is the manifestation of divine promises that were spoken long before you even understood their significance or recognized your role in their fulfillment. The enemy who orchestrated the attacks against your life will be forced to watch the unfolding of divine purposes with complete powerlessness to stop what has been declared by heaven. For when divine hands open a door, no human or demonic force can shut it. When divine power lifts up a life, no scheme or strategy can tear down what has been established by eternal decree. The suddenness of divine timing. Let this truth penetrate your understanding. What is beginning to manifest in your life now will appear to come suddenly, but it has actually been in motion for an extended period of time. The preparation has been thorough, the foundation has been laid carefully, and the timing has been calculated with perfect precision. You may feel unprepared from a natural perspective, looking at your circumstances and questioning whether you have the necessary qualifications, experience, or resources to handle what is being entrusted to you. However, from a spiritual perspective, you could not be more fully equipped. Everything you need for this season has already been deposited within your spirit over the course of years of faithful preparation. The wisdom required for the decisions you will face, the grace needed for the relationships you will navigate, the courage necessary for the challenges you will encounter, and the discernment essential for the opportunities you will evaluate. All of these qualities are already resident within you, waiting to be activated and expressed. As you move forward in obedience to divine leading, these inner resources will rise to the surface of your consciousness and become available for practical application. You will find yourself speaking with a clarity that surprises even you as divine wisdom flows through your words. You will discover that you are acting with a boldness that defies your past hesitations and previous patterns of behavior, as divine courage strengthens your resolve. You will navigate complex situations with precision and accuracy, because divine spirit serves as your guide, providing insight that transcends natural understanding. The transformation of identity. No longer will you question your capacity to fulfill the calling that has been placed upon your life. The season of self-doubt, insecurity, and constant second-guessing has come to an end. You will walk in confidence. Not the kind of arrogance that flows from pride and self-promotion, but the kind of quiet assurance that comes from knowing the source of your strength and the reliability of your divine backing. You have not been left behind while others advance to positions of influence and significance. You have not been overlooked while less qualified candidates were chosen for important assignments. The truth is that you have been reserved, set aside for such a time as this, kept in a place of protection rather than rejection. The hiding place where you spent extended seasons was not a prison designed to limit your potential. It was a training ground where essential skills were developed and crucial character qualities were refined. The obscurity you experienced was not abandonment. It was divine strategy to prepare you for visibility without the corrupting influence of premature exposure. Now you are being brought forth from that place of preparation, not with the fanfare and superficial celebration that often accompanies worldly promotion, but with the fire of divine presence burning within you. This fire represents divine purpose that cannot be extinguished, divine power that cannot be contained, and divine purity that purifies everything it touches. The complete transformation. You will not be the same person you were when this process began. The transformation has been so thorough and so complete that people may attempt to relate to the previous version of yourself, but they will encounter someone who has been fundamentally changed. They will meet someone who has walked through fire with divine presence, someone who carries the unmistakable aroma of holiness, and someone who bears the weighty evidence of genuine divine encounter. This is not the end of your process of development and growth. It is the beginning of your impact, the commencement of your influence, and the launch of your legacy. What has been built within you through years of faithful endurance is now ready to be released through you to touch, transform, and bless countless others. The divine unveiling continues. As you continue walking forward with divine presence through this unfolding revelation of purpose and calling, allow your heart to lean in even deeper to what is being revealed. You are not simply being invited to read the next chapter of your life story. You are being summoned into a divine unveiling of who you have always been in the heart and mind of your Creator. Everything that has been spoken over your life is not merely encouragement designed to make you feel better about past difficulties. It is confirmation of spiritual realities that have always been true. Validation of the inner sense you carried that insisted your steps were being guided even when the path seemed unclear. And verification that even the chaos and confusion served a divine purpose in the grand design of your development. The persistent tug you felt in your heart during the darkest seasons, the subtle whisper that urged you to keep going even when nothing made logical sense. The quiet voice that encouraged perseverance when every rational consideration suggested retreat. That was the voice of divine love speaking directly to your spirit. Now, what was once invisible to human observation will become undeniable to all who witness your transformation. What was once questioned by skeptics will become obvious to everyone. What was once hidden in the secret places of your heart will be displayed for all to see. The purpose behind endurance. You did not endure hardship simply to survive difficult circumstances. and eventually returned to normal life. You endured in order to emerge as a vessel of transformation, a catalyst for change, and an instrument of divine power. Divine intention was never for you to be just another name among many, just another person in the crowd of ordinary believers living ordinary lives. You were formed in the fire of adversity, specifically to carry divine presence in a way that few people can sustain. You were shaped through trials and testing to demonstrate divine power in a manner that few people can handle. You were prepared through seasons of obscurity to walk in levels of authority that few people can steward with integrity. This is why you never quite fit into the molds that others tried to create for you. This is why no matter how much effort you exerted to blend in with the crowd, something about you always stood apart from the norm. It was the divine mark upon your life, the fingerprint of eternity stamped upon your destiny, the seal of heaven that distinguished you for special purposes. Divine design never intended for you to be average, ordinary, or commonplace. Divine intention was always for you to be a person of significant impact, someone whose life would make a lasting difference, someone whose influence would extend far beyond the boundaries of your immediate circle. The season of release. Your impact begins not with fanfare and public celebration, but with simple obedience to divine leading. It starts not with spotlight and attention, but with quiet surrender to divine will. The extraordinary things that are about to flow through your life will not come from human effort, striving, or self-promotion, but from the overflow of what has been deposited within your spirit over years of faithful preparation. You are not entering a season characterized by struggle, strain, and exhausting effort to force outcomes through willpower and determination. You are stepping into a season of release. Release from burdens that have weighed you down. Release from limitations that have restricted your progress. And release from old mindsets that declared, "I'm not enough for what divine love is asking of me." The truth that must settle deeply into your consciousness is this: you are enough. Not because of your natural qualifications or impressive credentials, but because of divine calling that rests upon your life. Divine anointing flows over you like oil, and it is this anointing that breaks every yoke of limitation, opens every door of opportunity, and makes a way where there appears to be no way. The redemption of time. You once lived with the haunting fear that somehow, through delay or perceived disobedience, you had missed your moment of opportunity. You worried that the window of possibility had closed permanently, that divine plans had been forfeited through human failure, and that the fullness of what had been promised was no longer available. But hear this declaration with absolute clarity: nothing of eternal value has been lost. Divine power specializes in the redemption of time, the restoration of what was stolen, and the recovery of what appeared to be permanently broken. Divine creativity makes all things new, brings life from death, and creates beauty from ashes. What seemed to be delayed was actually being preserved for this exact moment, when all conditions would be perfectly aligned for maximum impact. What you feared had died was actually dormant, waiting in the soil of divine timing for the precisely correct season of resurrection and manifestation. The resurrection of purpose that is now taking place in your life will not merely revive what you once hoped to see. It will exceed your highest expectations, surpass your boldest dreams, and accomplish more than you dared to ask or imagine. You prayed for provision to meet your needs, but divine love is bringing abundance that will enable you to meet the needs of others. You asked for peace to calm your troubled heart, but divine presence is establishing unshakable joy that will remain constant regardless of changing circumstances. You sought restoration of what was broken, but divine power is delivering complete redemption that transforms every area of loss into a testimony of gain. The reward of faithful worship. Because you refused to allow prolonged waiting to steal your worship, because you continued to praise even when circumstances provided little reason for celebration, because you maintained a heart of gratitude even when prayers seemed to go unanswered, divine love will not allow your worship to go unrewarded. The seeds you planted with tears during the difficult seasons will now bloom with joy during this season of harvest. The prayers you offered in weakness, when faith felt fragile and hope seemed dim, will now be answered with demonstrations of divine strength that leave no doubt about the reality of divine power. Addressing inner fears. Let divine love speak directly to the quiet voice of fear that still whispers questions in the background of your thoughts. That persistent inner dialogue that wonders, can I really carry the weight of this calling? Can I really walk in the fullness of what divine love has prepared for me? Needs to be addressed with truth that brings complete peace. The answer to every question about your adequacy is an emphatic yes, not because of your natural ability, impressive education, or outstanding track record, but because of your alignment with divine will and your willingness to remain yielded to divine leading. You are not stepping into this new season alone, left to figure out complicated challenges through human wisdom and natural strength. Divine presence goes before you to prepare the way, walks beside you to provide companionship and guidance, and dwells within you to supply everything that is lacking. Everything you currently lack in terms of knowledge or experience, divine wisdom will supply through revelation and instruction. Everything you don't yet understand about your calling, divine spirit will teach through direct impartation and practical experience. Everything that causes fear or anxiety, divine peace will silence through the demonstration of divine faithfulness. Divine commissioning and equipment. Divine love never sends anyone into battle without proper armor and adequate weapons for victory. Divine wisdom never calls anyone to assignments without providing the empowerment necessary for successful completion. You are fully equipped for everything that lies ahead on your journey of destiny fulfillment. You must prepare your heart for the reality that with increased visibility comes increased responsibility. You prayed for influence, and now you must learn to steward it with wisdom and integrity. You asked for a platform, and now you must use it for divine purposes rather than personal promotion. You sought recognition, and now you must handle it with humility rather than pride. Influence must never be pursued for the sake of vanity or ego gratification, but for the advancement of divine vision and the expansion of divine kingdom. Visibility must never be used for the accumulation of personal applause, but for the alignment of human hearts with divine purposes and divine values. As divine love raises you to new levels of prominence and authority, your humility will be tested to ensure that success doesn't corrupt your character. As divine blessing flows into your life in unprecedented measure, your gratitude will be examined to confirm that abundance doesn't create entitlement or arrogance. The very same heart posture that brought you through the wilderness seasons and qualified you for this moment of elevation will be required to sustain you in the new dimensions of responsibility you are entering. Keep your eyes focused firmly on divine presence, rather than being distracted by human attention. Keep your ears tuned carefully to divine voice, rather than being swayed by the opinions of crowds. Allow divine spirit to guide every decision, every relationship, and every opportunity that comes your way. The pruning process. You will begin to notice shifts in the relationships that surround your life. Some people who once walked in close fellowship with you may begin to fall away from your circle of influence. Do not interpret this as rejection or failure in relationship management. Do not mourn the departure of those whom divine wisdom is removing from your life. What you are witnessing is a pruning process, not a punishment. Divine love is clearing space in your life, removing relationships that are not aligned with the new season you are entering, and making room for connections that will support and enhance your calling rather than hinder or complicate it. Those who can walk with you in this new dimension of your life are not those who merely tolerate your growth or grudgingly accept your advancement. They are people who genuinely honor your calling, celebrate your victories without jealousy, and provide encouragement for your continued development. Divine wisdom will surround you with connections that are truly divine in their origin and purpose. You will be blessed with relationships that sharpen your character rather than dulling your spiritual edge, that speak life into your spirit rather than draining your emotional energy, and that remind you of your true identity when the pressures of leadership threaten to obscure your vision. These relationships will include voices of wisdom that provide guidance during complex decisions, sources of discernment that help you navigate challenging situations, and examples of faithfulness that inspire you to maintain integrity even when compromise would be more convenient. You will also be taught how to become this kind of relationship blessing in the lives of others who are following behind you on similar journeys of spiritual development. The ripple effect of impact. The impact you are destined to make will not be confined to formal settings like stages, screens, or organized platforms. Your greatest influence will often happen in spontaneous conversations with individuals who cross your path, in prayers whispered over people who are broken and desperately need hope, and in quiet acts of faithfulness that demonstrate divine character when no one is watching or applauding. You will carry divine light into places where darkness has established strongholds, and that light will not be overcome or extinguished by the surrounding shadows. You will speak truth in environments where compromise has become the accepted norm, and your words will cut through deception with the precision of a sharp sword. You will model purity in situations where moral pressure abounds, and your example will inspire others to choose higher standards. This distinction you carry is not merely personal preference or individual choice. It is holy separation, sacred set-apartness that reflects divine character and demonstrates divine values in practical, visible ways. The power of your yes. Never underestimate the supernatural power that was released through your yes to divine calling, especially the yes you gave in dark seasons when you couldn't see the outcome clearly. Your yes when fear attempted to paralyze your faith. Your yes when logic argued against obedience. Your yes when human wisdom suggested safer alternatives. That yes moved heaven itself into action on your behalf. Your willingness to say yes when everything else in your life was saying no opened gates that had been locked for generations. Your yes in the darkness, when you couldn't see the path forward, triggered divine interventions that rearranged circumstances according to divine will. Your yes, when fear tried to paralyze your forward movement, brought you to this divine threshold where destiny and opportunity converge. Now, with divine hand resting upon your life in unmistakable demonstration of favor and approval, the invitation is extended once again: rise. But understand clearly that this is not the climax of your story. This is your commissioning. What you have received so far represents only a glimpse of what divine love has planned for your future. There is so much more waiting to be revealed, so much more waiting to be released, so much more waiting to be experienced. Stay closely connected to divine presence and allow divine love to lead you deeper into the mysteries of your calling and the wonders of your destiny, the remembrance of true identity. As we move forward together in this journey of divine revelation, it is time to awaken something profound within the depths of your spirit, a remembrance of who you have always been, in the heart and mind of divine love. This is not the creation of a new identity that must be constructed from scratch. This is the unveiling of a truth that has been present all along, though it was hidden beneath layers of trials, buried beneath the weight of others' opinions, and suppressed by the accumulation of past wounds and weariness. Now divine love is lifting the covering that has concealed your true nature. Now divine power is calling forth the authentic you that refused to die under pressure, the essential you that walked silently with divine presence when no one else understood your journey. The real you that has been forged in the fire of testing and emerged refined rather than consumed. This is your time not merely to rise in terms of external circumstances, but to reveal divine glory through every aspect of your life. Through your decisions that reflect divine wisdom, through your presence that carries divine peace, and through your obedience that demonstrates divine character. The nights of purpose seeking. Do you remember those long nights when you cried not for deliverance from your circumstances, but for understanding of your purpose? When your heart ached not for escape from difficulty, but for meaning that would make the struggle worthwhile? When you pleaded not for removal of the mountain that blocked your path, but for the strength and skill to climb it successfully? Divine ears heard every one of those cries, and they were music to the divine heart. While others begged for the removal of obstacles, you asked for the character development that would enable you to overcome them. While others sought shortcuts around the challenges, you requested the wisdom and strength to walk through them with victory. Blessings and wisdom elude obstacles, and with this heart attitude, this desire for growth rather than just relief, for maturity rather than just comfort, is the sound of spiritual maturity. It is evidence of someone who truly walks in partnership with divine presence. You were not merely seeking divine hand to intervene in your circumstances, you were seeking divine heart to transform your character. This seeking has now been rewarded. Divine love has waited for this moment, not because of uncertainty about your readiness, but because divine perfection was at work, perfecting what you would be able to carry without being crushed by the weight of glory. The weight of glory, the weight of divine glory, is not a light matter that can be handled casually or carelessly. Glory presses upon the character of those who carry it, stretches the spiritual capacity of those who steward it, and demands complete surrender from those who would represent it faithfully. You surrendered not once in a moment of emotional decision, not twice in times of special spiritual emphasis, but daily as a lifestyle of continuous yielding to divine will. You laid your pride on the altar of sacrifice when it would have been easier to protect your reputation. You surrendered your dreams when they conflicted with divine timing, your personal ambitions when they didn't align with divine purpose, your comfort when obedience required sacrifice, and your reputation when faithfulness demanded that you take positions that others wouldn't understand. You allowed divine love to chisel away everything that didn't belong to your authentic identity, everything that was merely surface decoration rather than substance, everything that represented human addition rather than divine design. This process created space for what remained to be truly holy, set apart for sacred purposes. Do not despise the stripping process, for it made room for glory to take up residence. Do not mourn what was removed, for its departure gave birth to what now lives and thrives within your spirit. Others interpreted the process as delay, but divine wisdom saw it as design. Others called it abandonment, but divine love knew it was alignment. The tree of life. You are not merely entering a fruitful season that will eventually end when conditions become less favorable. You are becoming like a tree that bears fruit in every season, regardless of external circumstances, because your roots have been planted deeply in the soil of divine presence and divine truth. The fruit you will bear will provide nourishment for those who are spiritually starved, sustenance for those who have been feeding on empty promises and superficial solutions. Your life will serve as a testimony that divine love still plants, still waters, and still brings the increase in the lives of those who remain faithful to divine calling. Divine love is placing upon you not merely favor for personal enjoyment, but assignment for kingdom advancement. This next dimension of your calling is not about collecting blessings like trophies to be displayed for admiration. It is about fulfilling a mandate that extends far beyond personal benefit to encompass the needs of countless others who will be touched by your faithful stewardship. Walking in divine authority. Divine love has equipped you to walk in places that others avoid because of fear, intimidation, or inadequacy. Divine power has given you authority to speak into atmospheres and shift them from one spiritual climate to another. When you enter a room, the spiritual environment will change, not because of your natural charisma or impressive presence, but because of divine presence that flows through your yielded life. You carry divine spirit, and wherever divine spirit is present, there is liberty, freedom from bondage, healing from brokenness, and hope for the hopeless. The manifestation of this liberty will be evident as you learn to walk confidently in your calling. Yes, there will be resistance to the authority you carry. Every elevation brings testing. Every open door attracts opposition from forces that prefer to keep doors locked. But you will not be shaken by these challenges, because what you now carry within your spirit cannot be stolen, corrupted, or destroyed by external pressure. What divine love has placed within you has been sealed by fire, authenticated through tears, and anchored by trust that has been tested and proven genuine. You are not stepping into something fragile that will break under pressure. You are stepping into something eternal that will endure every test and emerge stronger. The weight of influence. Prepare your heart for the weight of influence that operates not through the accumulation of followers, but through the assumption of responsibility. This kind of influence demands discernment to make wise decisions, compassion to understand the needs of others, wisdom to provide helpful guidance, and courage to take necessary stands for truth and righteousness. Divine love will supply everything you need to carry this responsibility with grace and effectiveness. You will speak words that break chains of bondage, and those who hear will experience freedom they have never known. You will pray prayers that open hearts to divine love, and those you intercede for will encounter divine presence in life-changing ways. You will love with divine love, and people will feel the reality of divine presence through your genuine care. This is what happens when a vessel becomes completely yielded to divine purpose. You are no longer trying to be the source of blessing in people's lives. You have become a conduit through which divine blessing flows to meet needs and transform lives. The expansion of territory. Through this complete yielding to divine purpose, divine love will expand your territory in both spiritual and practical ways. You will be given stewardship over lands and resources that you did not work to acquire. You will be entrusted with people and relationships that you are called to nurture and develop. Your story will no longer be characterized primarily by endurance, though endurance remains an important quality. Your story will become increasingly focused on empowerment, the empowerment you receive from divine sources and the empowerment you provide to others through faithful service. You are not merely rising for your own benefit, you are being sent as divine representative to specific people and places. Where divine love sends you, divine power will sustain you. Where divine wisdom plants you, divine blessing will cause you to prosper and flourish. You will not experience lack, not in strength when challenges demand more than you feel capable of giving, not in resources when opportunities require investment, not in favor when doors need to be opened. Because you have aligned your purposes with divine purpose, you will walk in the flow of divine provision, guarding against deception. Be vigilant and discerning, precious child. Not everyone who offers applause is truly aligned with your calling and divine purpose. Guard your inner circle carefully. Protect the purity of your calling from those who would seek to exploit your influence for their own gain or corrupt your mission with their own agendas. Do not trade access to your spirit, which is your most precious possession, for superficial support that lacks substance and authenticity. Divine wisdom will send you the right people at the right time, people who truly understand your calling and are committed to supporting divine purposes rather than personal advancement. Wait for these divine connections rather than settling for relationships that appear beneficial on the surface, but lack the spiritual depth necessary for the journey ahead. Trust divine timing in relationships, just as you have learned to trust divine timing in all other areas of your life. Divine love knows exactly who can walk with you into the deeper dimensions of your calling. Divine wisdom understands who can be trusted to protect what has been deposited within your spirit, rather than seeking to exploit it for personal gain. Be wise in your relationships. Be gentle in your approach to others. But above all, remain firmly anchored in divine presence as your primary source of guidance and wisdom. The time for bold action. Let your life speak now with clarity and conviction. Let your decisions reflect the depth of what you believe divine love has spoken over your life. The season of shrinking back in fear or false humility has ended. The time of dimming your light to make others comfortable with your presence has passed. The days of apologizing for the mantle you carry or the calling you have received are over. You were born for this moment. You were shaped in the fire of adversity specifically for this purpose. You were called before you understood the magnitude of the calling, chosen before you recognized your qualification, and commissioned before you felt ready for the assignment. Nothing, no lie that was spoken against you, no delay that frustrated your expectations, no doubt that attempted to undermine your confidence, can unwrite what divine love has spoken over your life. The declarations of heaven are unalterable. The purposes of divine love are unstoppable. The timing of divine wisdom is perfect. The moment has arrived. Step forward, not as someone begging for permission or apologizing for your existence, but as the beloved child of the Most High, fully authorized to walk in the calling that has been prepared specifically for you. Move forward, not in fear that shrinks back from challenge, but in faith that embraces the adventure of divine partnership. Advance not with uncertainty about your qualifications, but with unshakable confidence in the one who qualifies and empowers you for every assignment. Heaven is watching with anticipation. Earth is waiting with expectation. Divine presence is walking beside you every step of the way. The stage is set. The moment is now. Your time has come. This is your awakening. This is your rising. This is the divine unveiling of purpose that has been hidden in the secret counsels of heaven until this appointed time. Step into the fullness of who you were created to be, and let divine glory shine through every aspect of your transformed life.